We're here live inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium for our Kroger kickoff, where in just a moment the Georgia Bulldogs will make their way inside. The Alabama Crimson Tide of the 2018 SEC Championship will take place. Hello, everybody. I am Brandon Adams from Dog Nation. Welcome into our Kroger kickoff with pregame coverage of what's going to unfold here over the course of the next few minutes. Of course, Georgia fans waking up to a couple pieces of news that they've dealt with over the last few hours. First of all, it has been the rain in and around Mercedes-Benz Stadium in downtown Atlanta all day long. Certainly it's been fun to walk around and see the way that Georgia fans have pressed on with their tailgate and continue to have a good time, including our Road to Atlanta tailgate that our friends from Kroger have been a part of there. Clearly, Georgia fans are used to making the best of the situation and making the most of a tailgate, and that's been fun to see both with our Road to Atlanta tailgate and all the tailgates adjacent to that around the blue lot here today. Obviously now we are dry. We are inside the stadium, if not a little dark here in the bottom of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. A lot to think about for Georgia on the field. Before we get to that, though, the other piece of news beyond the rain that we've already dealt with and talked about this morning are those reports, first reported, I guess, from Pete Thamel from Yahoo Sports, about the likelihood that both Georgia and Alabama, the two teams in this year's SEC Championship, would be losing a coordinator, if not by the at the end of this game, certainly by the end of their seasons, whenever it does end for both these teams that still have postseason aspirations. The thought is that Mike Locksley could be on his way out as Alabama offensive coordinator, becoming a head coach, and as Thamel suggested, Georgia defensive coordinator Mel Tucker could be on the move to Colorado. There have been reports from Rivals.com and other sources in and close to the Colorado program that indeed Colorado had targeted Tucker as its next head coach. It's worth pointing out here that Colorado itself has released a statement not too long ago. You can read more about this right now at DawgNation.com, saying that they are not yet ready to announce a head coach, that they won't have any kind of decision finalized until late next week, or I should say at some point in time next week. So Colorado, at least publicly, is trying to pump the brakes on the notion that Tucker is indeed set to be the next coach of the Buffaloes. So that is also pretty pro forma when it comes to a coaching situation like this. We'll obviously pay close attention to that. I actually spent some time on the forum this morning at forum.dognation.com sharing my thoughts about what would indeed happen if indeed Tucker is set to be on the move. And I'll share some of these for you right now here as a part of our Kroger kickoff as well. I don't think Tucker's potential status is a distraction for Georgia today. I think programs have been dealing with this for quite some time. This is something that Alabama's dealt with a lot. Obviously, we know that Kirby Smart was at one point in time the Alabama defensive coordinator before becoming Georgia head coach. Jeremy Pruitt was at Alabama last year before becoming Tennessee coach. That having coordinators on the move around the playoff time of year is just the fact of life when it comes to the overall situation in college football. So this really won't be that much different when it comes to Tucker. I also don't think if Tucker is indeed about to become the next Colorado coach, it's going to impact Georgia's 2019 recruiting class. Tucker's obviously been a great defensive coordinator. He is also a recruiter that has strong relationships with a lot of the current Georgia players and a lot of the 2019 targets. But Georgia has established relationships with most of these players with more than just one guy. For instance, people think about Tucker as a guy that's close with many of the defensive backs. We also know that two of Georgia's 2019 defensive back targets that are considering Georgia right now, Tyreek Stevens and Kyrie Elam, both from down in South Florida. We know that the reputation among the Georgia assistants of the coach that's had the biggest impact in South Florida is James Coley, whose offense, his side of the ball specialty is on offense, but obviously from a geographic specialty, he's certainly been a big impact recruiter in South Florida. So ultimately, if Tucker is indeed gone, and likely he would, much like most of these assistants in the SEC in recent years, stick around through the college football playoff. If he is indeed gone, though, Georgia should have a pretty good plan in place to maintain its focus and intensity during the season and also quickly replace him in terms of a new defensive coordinator to give a 2019 recruit the idea of how the Georgia defense was going to look going forward. As I suggested, the forum at forum.dognation.com, were Tucker to leave, I believe that the success that Tucker's created at Georgia, along with Kirby Smart, a very defensive-minded head coach, I believe that the sources that Georgia would be looking at there would be, for the most part, inside sources. I don't believe an outside candidate would be interviewed for the job. I think Georgia would choose from its current position coach assistants as the next defensive coordinator. I would suggest that the best potential name there might be Glenn Schumann, who certainly seems to be a coach on the rise. And were he not Georgia's defensive coordinator in the near future, he may become defensive coordinator somewhere else. So that is certainly something to think about, and we'll clearly pay close attention to that. But the overall, I think, main point, the bottom line is, I don't think that is the kind of story that's a potential distraction for Georgia against Alabama today. This game's going to be won and lost by the game plan that Georgia's been putting together over the course of the last few weeks, and the news of the last 24 to 48 hours, I don't think is going to impact all that much. If you're just joining us, let me remind you that my name is Brandon Adams. This is our Kroger Kickoff. Over the course of this year, we have come to you in a lot of different ways. In stifling heat early in the season, in bitter cold before Auburn, a little bit of rain last week before Georgia Tech, and now from the bowels of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where it has been raining all day on the outside. But here we are on the inside right now, and in just a few minutes, Georgia will be in this stadium as well. We'll have Kroger Kickoff coverage for you a lot on the Dog Nation video channels over the course of our time leading up to kickoff, including what we hope is some coverage from on the field a bit later on. But we'll also have time for your questions and comments. And then, of course, don't forget to join us for Northside Hospital postgame coverage. That's also immediately after the game on all the Dog Nation video channels as well. And given the nature of this game, as big as it is, you may see a few extra things in terms of our Northside Hospital postgame coverage. We may do a little bit more of that than normal. The same way it'll be kind of an expanded Kroger Kickoff here. By the way, speaking of Kroger, don't forget that for those of you who are hosting a big game day party today, or you're getting a head start on the holidays for yourself, and what you want to do in terms of your holiday entertaining, don't forget that today is the final day to redeem those great coupons that have been out there at Kroger, at Kroger.com, and on the Kroger app, on those Tostitos chips and the Johnsonville brats, and also in select games there as well. So if you want to stock up with those for your big game day party today, Kroger.com and on the Kroger app, this is the last day to redeem the coupons that you may have gotten from there. I'm going to pull up the Facebook comments here. We'll take a few comments while we get ready for Georgia to make its way in. You may have seen behind me a moment ago the Georgia Bulldogs, or I should say the Alabama Crimson Tide band was walking in. You may have gotten a chance to see that. We'll see Georgia make its way in to the stadium here. What you're seeing on your screen is also a bit of the walkthrough from yesterday when these players got a chance to see the inside of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Georgia, as you've probably known and heard by now a lot, is the youngest team in college football, among the youngest teams. Lots of freshmen who are in this building for the first time. Maybe they played in state championship scenarios last year in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but they did not. There are no state championships in Mercedes-Benz. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, it snowed last year, right? Yeah, thank you. Connor Riley corrects me that there was weather last year that kept the state championships from being played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Anyway, so a lot of these freshmen are seeing this stadium for the first time yesterday. They got a chance to walk through that and get familiar with that. One of the things that I found remarkable when you did the walkthrough yesterday, because we also had a chance to be on the field a little bit, the artificial surface here at the roofed stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, when you bend down, you touch it, you kind of step on it with your sneakers or your shoes, it is a little spongier than what you would normally feel with natural grass. Obviously, those little rubber pellets that help make up all these surfaces and all these stadiums, you kick up a lot of that when you're running and moving. And so for a team in Georgia that's played its games on natural grass, that plays opponents that also play on natural grass, this surface is a little bit different. This is something a little more unique, and so there's obviously some time spent getting used to that, which is what Georgia had a chance to do yesterday. Let me take some of your comments while we roll on here on our Kroger Kickoff, getting ready for Georgia and Alabama in the SEC Championship, and getting ready for our pregame coverage that's going to come up here in just a couple of minutes. Bobby Royal also putting in the statement from Bruce Feldman from The Athletic, who did get the quote from the folks at Colorado. Yeah, we talked about that a little earlier as an addendum to what's been in the Mel Tucker news, but thank you for having that in the comment section for us there as well. Tom Chadwick says, all gas, no brakes for the Dawgs today. Certainly that is a great sentiment for Georgia fans who, and I know for those of you who've been watching Underdog Nation Daily this week or our Road to Atlanta coverage driven by Cadillac, I know you've all heard how many times I've said, can it hurry up and be Saturday? Can we hurry up and get this game here? Can we be inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium getting ready for the kickoff? Well, no matter where you are today, kickoff is almost here. We are almost ready to go, and I think there's a level of anxiety and energy among the fans that, for the players, they've had a chance to focus in on their practices or focus in on their routine or focus in on the message from the coaches. Sometimes, and we hear this from a lot of the former players who join us on our programs from time to time, that there's no greater anxiety than the anxiety that an ex-player feels when he can no longer play the game. When he's watching the game just like anybody else, that nervous energy builds on a game day like this. And I think a lot of fans certainly know what that's like because I woke up this morning by 5 a.m. I was wide awake and ready to go and excited about what we're going to see later on. Many of you, I think I've heard from that said I couldn't sleep either. There's just an overall sense that the time is here, and pretty soon, one way or another, Georgia as a huge underdog against Alabama, with a lot of people believing the chances of pulling an upset are just not all that likely to occur. There's a real sense here that we're going to find out one way or another. Either Alabama truly is one of the greatest college football teams of all time, or Georgia is in the midst of writing one of the greatest stories in recent college football history of Kirby Smart in his third year as Georgia coach, getting the first ever win against his old boss and certain mentor, Nick Saban. What a moment it's going to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium with the SEC Championship at 4 p.m. later on today. Obviously, you can watch the game on CBS. If you're not close, though, you can also listen to the game on the radio with our friends at News 95.5 and AM 750 at WSB. They're the radio home of the Dogs. The only place you can hear the Georgia folks calling the game. I'm talking about our buddy Scott Howard. Of course, the great former Georgia quarterback Eric Zier. Pregame coverage on the radio there as well. So please make sure you check that out. Sarah Weldon Dudley has a great comment in the Facebook comment section. Sarah says, wish we had Todd Gurley. He is a beast in the NFL. He's the #1 running back in the NFL and happy for his success. And I think that's a great quote. And, we had a chance to talk to Marcus Spears yesterday. Spears, obviously the terrific analyst on the SEC network. And we were talking about the ways in which that Georgia has improved going back to the LSU game, a game that LSU lost. And my point to Marcus, and maybe you saw this on our Road to Atlanta show last night, but my point to Marcus was, had Georgia played Alabama the same day it played LSU, Georgia would have lost that game too. And if Georgia plays as poorly today as it played against LSU, it's heading for almost a certain loss. Even the most optimistic Georgia fan would agree with that. However, speaking of optimism, there's reason to believe that the Georgia that was on display in Baton Rouge was left there in the boot. That group of that version of the Georgia team is gone. And in the 5 games since then, Georgia on a 5-game winning streak has played a much better brand of football. And to go back to what the commenter said about Todd Gurley, listen, I can't promise you that DeAndre Swift or Elijah Holyfield are going to be the next Todd Gurley. As the commenter said, Gurley may be not just the best running back in the NFL. He may be the best player, period, in the NFL right now. But the same way that last year Georgia had a tandem of running backs in Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel, who truly gave Georgia a chance to win every game it played, including down to the wire with Alabama in the national championship game. Right now, over the course of this 5-game winning streak, as Marcus Spears from the SEC Network pointed out, it's that tandem of Georgia running backs now who are doing the same thing. It is suddenly DeAndre Swift, who, whatever groin injuries he was dealing with early in the season, that doesn't seem to be an issue. All of a sudden, Elijah Holyfield has found a perfect role as the complement to DeAndre Swift. And now these two guys are racking up 200-plus yards per game with regularity. 4 straight games in which Georgia's gone over 200 yards rushing. Spears yesterday said that he thought a key number for Georgia was 150 yards. When Georgia finds a way to run for at least 150 yards, as Marcus Spears pointed out, it doesn't lose. Last year in the national championship game, it finished just short of that number. We obviously all know the end result. So I think that's an important point to bring up in the comment section. When you look at Georgia's best chance of winning, obviously a lot of that focuses in on and factors in on being able to stop Tua Tagovailoa. But part of the issue for Georgia is how it matches the offensive firepower that Alabama brings to the table. And some of that's going to rest on the shoulders of Jake Fromm today, and a lot of that's going to rest on the shoulders of this Georgia running game. DeAndre Swift and Elijah Holyfield, who have clearly right now proven that Georgia, who likes to fashion itself as running back university, RBU as they like to call it, clearly Swift and Holyfield are doing their part to maintain that legacy. And it is one of the reasons why I think most Georgia fans think that Georgia has a very good chance of winning this game here today. You're watching the Kroger Kickoff. My name is Brandon Adams. We're inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And in just a couple of minutes, the Georgia Bulldogs will be inside this stadium as well. And we'll be getting ready for Georgia, Alabama after that with pregame coverage all day long on video with our Kroger Kickoff and the forum at forum.dognation.com, on the web at dognation.com. And then after the game with our Northside Hospital postgame coverage from all over this place. And what we hope is a victorious fashion with lots of smiles on the folks wearing red and black. What a night this sets up to be. We've got time for more comments. We'll get ready to take a lot of those right now. Alan Verbanchik talking about the idea of 2 sacks. I'm thinking he's saying DeAndre Walker may step up and get those 2 sacks today. And we know that I've already heard from a lot of the Alabama media on this. When they think about the reasons why they are confident that the team they cover is going to win, Alabama, the thing that they seem to bring to mind is the fact that Georgia has not been strong with its pass rush. That's something that Georgia, statistically speaking, has just been pretty weak with this year. We know that additional pressure, bringing the additional rusher, the blitzer, so to speak, we know that's an important part for Georgia. We know that that's got to be almost any key to any victory. That's got to be that. Gates are opening behind me. I don't know what that means, but we will certainly see if that means that Georgia's about to make its way in here. Teddy Lawhead on the Facebook comment section says, don't forget, the Citadel ran for 275 yards against Alabama. That's certainly true. A little bit different brand of running game. The Citadel obviously runs that triple option offense. It's fashioned by now ex-Georgia Tech coach Paul Johnson. You can make a case that maybe Alabama wasn't quite as prepared for that 2 Saturdays ago as Georgia was last week against the Yellow Jackets, given the fact they play it every single year. But nonetheless, that was something that gave us some Alabama fit. So maybe there's something that Georgia sees that does make them feel better. Or maybe fans at least see something from that Citadel performance and say, this gives us a reason to feel better about what's going to go on here. I hear the air brakes behind me, so clearly some sort of big vehicle is here. I'm also starting to see, I don't hear sirens, but I do see blue lights flashing. That could mean good news here. Allison Herndon says, I'm going to be wearing my red and black today. Allison, wherever you are, we certainly appreciate that. Dog Nation uniting, not just here in Atlanta and downtown, but around the state of Georgia and around the world. I've heard from people from Australia, South Korea in the last 12 hours alone. And it looks like, yes, here we go with the Georgia Bulldogs making their way in. There's no cheers today because there's no fans anywhere around here. But we'll give you a chance to see it. Here comes Georgia coach Kirby Smart. Headphones on, game face and ready to go. Georgia staffers following behind him. Not a festive atmosphere today. This team coming straight into the stadium. You do hear some people starting to notice, though. There is Isaac Nada coming in. Here is Big Ben Cleveland. Here is Jake Fromm also walking in. Charlie Warner, Jim Chaney behind him. Justin Fields, Elijah Holyfield. Terry Gobbin, always among the best dressed players. He's rolling in right now. Here comes Isaiah Wilson. The Georgia team starting to make its way in. The unmistakable size of Andrew Thomas with his suit and tie combination as Georgia starts to continue to file into the Mercedes-Benz Stadium as a part of our Kroger Kickoff. Thank you so much for being with us and being a part of this here today. Julian Rochester coming in, John Fitzpatrick, Georgia coming. There's Rodrigo Blankenship. Always a cool look for Blankenship today, no different. Georgia offensive line coach Sam Pittman now walking through for the second consecutive year. Georgia making its way into Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the SEC championship game. Make no mistake and do not forget, as Georgia continues to file in, that in this game today it is Georgia who is the reigning champion as Demetrius Robertson walks by. And more Georgia players. Malik Herring, one of the stars of last week's game against Georgia Tech, he's now made his way in. The freshman linebacker Adam Anderson just came by a moment ago. The support staff now flanking on both sides. Here comes McCall Hartman, who's clearly in a good mood. He's clearly ready to go. Notori Johnson behind him. And this Georgia team is just about in. And the Kroger Kickoff is up and running here on a fantastic day. Here in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. How about the different modes of operation for a lot of those Georgia players? At the beginning of the line, you saw stone-faced and serious Kirby Smart, and many of the players in the early going behind him kind of with that same look. Isaac Nada, who's always among the first when he comes out there for the dog walk, he was just as serious as always, and typically he's one of the most fun-loving players in this roster. By the time you got to the end, though, you did see some Georgia players clearly not impacted by the nerves, clearly not overwhelmed by the moment. McCall Hartman laughing and having a good time, and a suit that made it look like he was ready to hit the town and go all night long, so to speak, if it was a Georgia victory tonight. But Georgia is in the stadium. They will now make a sharp right turn from where we're standing here. They will take a long walk towards their locker room. They will get dressed, and then after that, well, you know it's about time for kickoff. Speaking of kickoff, we've got more Kroger Kickoff coverage coming for you later on from on the field. So get settled in, head over to Kroger, take advantage of the big savings they have right now. Get your game day party goods stocked up. We've got more coming up. The big one comes up at 4 p.m. Thanks for letting Dog Nation cover it for you. We appreciate you being here with us. My name is Brandon Adams. We'll talk to you again soon right here on the Kroger Kickoff.